right, here we go. So I got Michael Langer here. We've had a fun time chatting for just a few minutes. He is related to one of our team members in the Gents Place family. We're not going to mention which one, for her protection or his protection. We're not sure, but if he chooses to admit who it is, that's fine. But Michael's got just a world of experience. He serves as associate director at Ministry of State. Lives up there in Washington, D.C., where nothing short of action right now in that city. That is, I don't know if I'd want to be there. I wouldn't want to be there, but I'm glad you're there because you can shed some insights into, I think, the people that are thinking about all this adversity as an opportunity for something better afterwards. That's what the show is all about. We know, we watch the news, we know how bad things are, we know how much debt we have, we know how much people are losing their jobs, but there've got to be some people up there in DC that are thinking about this adversity and thinking about what's next and how it can lead to innovation and creativity and business growth and all of those things. And then in your own, I mean, you've got an amazing track record of just being in ministry, and I'm sure your mindset has been formed over time to handle these types of situations really well. So any insights you have just from a personal level or advice you can give to us on what we can do in the face of all of this. So I guess probably where I'd want to start out is how, if you just have, what is your generic answer to someone that comes to you and says, Mr. Langer, I'm depressed. I don't know what to do with my life. This is hard for me. Where do I go from here?
Well, so that happens about 5 times a week for me right now with various people. My ministry, there's 6 of us here in Washington, D.C. We do Bible studies, personal pastoral meetings, various forums, discussion groups, and things like that with members of Congress, people in cabinet departments, and their staffs. And it probably won't be a huge surprise to folks to learn that the lion's share of the grunt work, the actual day-to-day making things happen, is happening because these cabinet secretaries and congressmen and senators have amazing staffs that are super talented. And they'll never be interviewed. No one will ever know who they are. And they, just a quick example, one of the cabinet agencies that we lead a Bible study in is the Department of Labor. And, 6 weeks ago, one of their projects was to try to figure out what do we need to do to reposition the Department of Labor for dealing with a 1099 and gig economy. How can we streamline what we're doing, because we're noticing that the economy, the way that we work as a people has changed. And then 2 weeks later, it's, okay, we got to figure out how to get 20 million unemployment checks to, some huge group of people. And we suspect that those numbers are just going to exponentially grow. So every project that you were working on last week, you can table that, because right now we have to make this system has to work for what we need it to do, and it has to do it by Friday.
You thought your job was tough. That just put everything in perspective.
Yeah. And so what happens there is what happened with anybody. Hey, I had this great project. I was really excited about it. I was, we were doing the work that the secretary, wanted to see happen in, the State Department, you name it. It's in each department, they are working for a particular mission. And to have that mission change on, you go to bed, you wake up, guess what? Forget all that stuff. We got more urgent things to deal with right now. And it's been good for us because for me, I planted my first church in Iowa City, Iowa, with no people, no money, and no building, but in the middle of a financial crisis and a natural disaster. And prior to getting there, I had a multiple page document. We were going to do this on this day, and then we were going to do this, and then we would hire a worship team. And, Mike Tyson said once, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth. And we're like, okay, that plan is completely irrelevant at this point. We have to go back and say, what is actually needed? What is actually the most important thing? What is actually going to benefit the common good right now? And that's what all of these people are struggling with. And, to some respects, one of the things that I find myself frequently doing is saying, a lot of these folks, they're like SEAL Team 6, meaning not only are they amazing, but if they do their job well, most people don't know that they did it, right? Some of the folks involved in our ministry were intricately or intimately involved in the $2.3 trillion bailout, actually putting language into it. And to say that that was stressful and exhausting mentally, physically, and spiritually for them would be a huge understatement. But so when I talk with them, one of the things that I remind them of, because as I'm sure you could probably imagine, Washington, D.C. operates on a system fairly committed to making a name for yourself here. And while that's just a part of the system, for Christians and for our ministry, one of the things that we're constantly working with people is, if your primary goal in life is to make your name great, to kind of advance your personal agenda, it's going to be exhausting. And it's also very slippery, right? So whatever agenda you had a month ago working in government, that agenda's gone, even for elected officials. When was the last time you heard Joe Biden talking about what he wanted to do for America? He's lucky if people even remember he's running for president right now, because we've got a national pandemic crisis that has shut the country down and people are dying. And so the thing that we need to do as a country right now is say, whatever else I was working on, I need to reprioritize it. What matters, what's important now, and what helps the most people. So being able to come alongside them and say, you can spend the next 40 years of your life trying to make a name for yourself, or you can spend the next 40 years of your life offering your work as worship, working to see the most people blessed possibly that you can bless through your work. And no matter what the situation is, there's always an answer to that question. In this situation, what would bless the most people? What will help protect or serve the most people? If that's the goal that you find yourself pursuing, no matter what the circumstances are, that's always achievable. You can always reset and say, what do I have to do now to help the most people?
I love that. And I've always thought of it as each person having their own God-given gift and discovering that gift. And that's kind of what I'm providing of service to other people. And everyone's got, the beautiful thing about it is everyone has unique gifts. So if it's public speaking, or if it's being good at math, or if it's being a reverend, or getting a deal done, whatever that gift is that finding that, and that's what you're giving out over and over and over again, right? To kind of serve others.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely correct. There's this picture in the Bible, this story of when God's people get rescued out of Egypt, where they've been in slavery and been treated very poorly as workers for 400 years. The Lord spends the Exodus reframing them, getting them to kind of shift their mindset. Hey, you weren't created to work as slaves. You were created to work as my beloved children. And I'm going to teach you about that. And then I'm going to take you to a place where you're going to do it, to the promised land. And unfortunately, they didn't stay on task. So they get sent to Babylon. So the story goes, And you can imagine, I'm sure there were people in that group who thought to themselves, okay, so we're going to the worst possible city we can imagine going to. We really hate this kingdom. We will just work to subvert the city, to try to bring it to its knees here. That must be what we're supposed to do. But the prophet Jeremiah gets this message from the Lord to give to the people. And he says in Jeremiah 29:7, seek the welfare of the city that I'm sending you. And in seeking their welfare, you will find yours also. And he tells them, build houses, take jobs, do things to bless that city. And that can always be done. So we can say, oh, I'm in a really bad circumstance right now. Things are not what I want. Things are not working out the way that I had hoped. What do I give up? Well, no, you seek the welfare of the place that you are, seek to bless the most people, and the rest of it will kind of take care of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Christian church, all of them, I've seen reference time, talent, and treasure, the ways that you can support your community and support the church. And I feel like people go to treasure first and say, if I have treasure, that's the first thing I can give. And when treasure has gone way down for so many people, I know some business owners that have laid off 40,000 people, right? Treasure is down. And so they say, well, I can't give, I have nothing to give. But time actually has completely inverted itself. Time, we have an abundance of time right now, most of us who, right, don't have a job. How do we capitalize on that? Like, where should we be using our time, or how should we think about using that time to serve the greater good?
Wow. That's a great question. I think one of the things that I've noticed, so all of our Bible studies now are taking place over Zoom, like so many people. And one of the things that's been really interesting to watch is in these studies, they usually take place early in the morning. I'm not just seeing the individual that works at whatever cabinet agency or wherever on the hill, but I'm seeing them with their kid running around trying to get breakfast. And other members of that Bible study who work in the same agency or department as them will say, oh, there's your kid. I didn't realize you had a child, or there he is. This moving all of our connection from an office to our houses and forcing us to do these video streaming events has, I think, in a very odd way, actually given us time to appreciate the fact that these people actually do have lives. They do actually have spouses and children, and the morning is a busy time trying to get ready, and you've got to hand your kid off back and forth to various parents to try to get out the door to wherever it is that you need to work. And it has given us, I think, a period of rest to actually step back and go, I work with people, with families, with children, and their children are kind of cute, actually. And, when they show up at work at 8:00 for an early meeting or 7:00 for an early meeting, they didn't just miraculously show up from their house. There was a whole process that had to, be gone through of getting kids breakfast or, whatever. And so I think this aspect of, like, we now have time to actually get to know each other a little bit better than the office allows, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's a fascinating insight that I think intuitively, us disconnecting from each other physically, it'd be intuitive to say we are losing that humanization. We're going to dehumanize these relationships. We can't be with each other physically. But technology, the way everything's set up now and the way that we're connecting, it's actually humanized people more, like you said, because I can see your kids in the background. You can see all of the whiskey I like to drink.
Yeah,
here, right?
right.
I wouldn't have been able to bring, it probably wouldn't have been appropriate if we met in person for me to bring 8 bottles of whiskey with me. You're
Well,
right. My
it's
first time
always
meeting you.
appropriate if you're meeting me to bring 8 bottles of whiskey. That's absolutely okay because I'm Presbyterian and that's an okay thing.
Well, and I'm Catholic, so we're match made in heaven.
Oh, that's excellent.
Uh, that's a fascinating insight. I agree with you. I've experienced that myself. Validation just right here on this call that we probably would not have met had it not been for this happening. And that is the case with so many people I've talked to date, and many more people I will talk to. So that's wonderful. That's a wonderful thought. I can't imagine being in a world of change, constant change. This is even pre-COVID-19,
Yeah.
right? Is everything you've described to me is that's just the way life is, I imagine.
Right. That's right.
In DC. Those people are prepared for change, I would think, more than others. I mean, how are they handling this change compared to the normal change?
Well, I mean, on top of all the, COVID moved itself up to the #1 priority for a number of cabinet agencies. And, whatever political issues you were trying to run with as a member of Congress or the Senate, the #1 thing that your constituency wants to care about is very similar to what they want to care about when there's a natural disaster, which is, okay, where's my help right now? My building just got leveled by a hurricane. That's great that you want to rework Social Security or whatever it is you want to do, but my building has 3 feet of water in it. I need this to be your highest priority right now. And it used to be that or in the past, that experience of a natural disaster was fairly localized, right? Maybe it was Alabama, it was the Gulf Coast, or, wherever it was. But now it's every single congressman, every single senator, every single cabinet agency. They're all working on the same thing right now. How do we respond to COVID? And so one of the things that I've seen is this has actually been very unifying, right? This is a change where like, okay, we're all working on the same thing because we all want. When this happens again, if this happens again, we've got to be better prepared. Whatever it is that we do now has to prepare us to better respond in the future. And this is not a partisan thing. We just got to get it worked out. One of the things that I think for me was the most eye-opening when I first got here and started leading Bible studies in cabinet departments. And, in any cabinet department, you have appointees that the administration gets to appoint to positions of leadership. And then there are careers who have worked there 10, 20, 30, 40 years as public servants, right? And so whenever there is a change in administration, that means there's a change in appointees, and there's usually a change in direction about the things that each cabinet agency is going to prioritize. And the appointee's job is to get that done. And the metaphor that I've come to use as I lead Bible studies in these is that the appointee's job is, to build a new sandcastle on the beach, right? You go like, hey, I got plans for a great sandcastle. It's going to look fantastic when it's done. And then they build it. But what often happens is that the responsibility of actually executing that falls to the careers to build it, right? And then about a year and a half into the administration, the appointees realize, oh, well, when I'm gone and there's a new administration, the likelihood is very high that somebody else is going to sit in my desk and is going to look at the list of the things that I did that I thought were important and say, well, this is about the worst sandcastle ever. We need to rebuild this thing all over the place. And so the appointee has this like, what part of this is going to be my legacy? The career is the person who's been building and dismantling and building and dismantling and building and dismantling sandcastles for 30 years, being told during one administration, oh, you're doing a great job. That's really wonderful. I really like the way that looks. And by the next administration, who told you to build it that way? That's not attractive at all. You should have the moat over here. And the wonderful thing that this has done, this COVID, is that's out the window, right? We have got to figure out in each agency, in each office, what do we need to do now so that if this happens or when this happens again, we can respond to it efficiently and appropriately and effectively. And it's not about, well, our party favors doing things this way, or our party favors, doing things this way. This is what is best for the country. So that's been a real shift.
This whole show is about positive shifts that people are making. And if I think our viewers and listeners hear nothing else about this, is the ratings of Congress are always very poor. The ratings for presidents are very up and down, generally poor. It's a breath of fresh air to hear that Republicans are a little less Republican, Democrats are a little less Democrat. I think even religions are kind of unifying together, but there's this collective awakening that seems to be happening as a result of this virus. So that makes me feel good as an American citizen to hear from someone who's in the thick of it, that the two parties are actually agreeing on some things and working together. And who knows, maybe this will last for a little while. The longer this goes on, maybe the longer these people will feel connected to each other. But that's a breath of fresh air in and of itself.
I get asked pretty frequently by people around the country who support our ministry and what we do. What can we do? How can we participate? How can we pray for you? How can we bless you? And I just say, the thing that would be great right now is if you could just send a 2-word email to your congressman that just says thank you. They're very busy, so don't call them, don't tie up their phones unless you actually need something, but just letting them know thank you for what you're doing. The staff person who sees that email, whose job it is to answer the phone all day long, listening to people saying, where are my unemployment checks? I've tried to log on to the Small Business Administration website and it keeps crashing, and I've got to pay bills. And they're, as I'm sure you can imagine, not everybody who calls the United States Congress is in a really good mood. And the congressman usually isn't answering those phone calls. It's a 21, 22, 23-year-old intern or staff assistant, and they're doing their best. And everybody on the Hill, Republican, Democrats, Independents, they are all doing their best. They all want to serve. They really do.
That's a great reminder. And I think there is a huge sense of appreciation right now for teachers, because none of us were prepared. Very few of us were prepared to be homeschool teachers. We've realized so there's a tremendous amount of respect there for healthcare workers and those on the front lines that are keeping everybody safe and trying to recover people. And I do think that our congressmen and women, our president, everyone in the cabinet, and certainly the people that we don't see on TV, all those staff members, those have been the ones that I think have been forgotten. And so I appreciate the reminder to everybody that they are working hard. You're in the middle of this. You see them working hard. You see how much they care. I can't imagine anybody's getting a lot of sleep up there in the last many weeks or a couple of months. And I can't imagine that. So thank you for reminding us of that we've got other public servants that may not have the masks on right now that are in the hospitals, but they're trying to do whatever they can to get us out of this. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to leave it at that. I want to talk to you for hours. And if you could just do a 60-minute recording of your voice to talk about anything you want and send it to me. And I'll put that on replay when I go to sleep every night.
Well, we actually have a podcast coming out. We have a whole series of podcasts at Ministry to State, but mine will be out next week. It's called A Faithful Presence, and it's how to live as Christians in a world that often thinks you're irrelevant or extreme.
Oh, wonderful. See, I knew something was coming where you could fulfill my dreams.
There you go.
All right. I will be your first listener. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Michael.
Hey, thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate you having me.
All right. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.